Okay, great. So we are here at Miami University in Introduction to Asian/Asian American Studies. I'm Professor Terry Park, and I am joined today by two awesome people. First, we have Nicklin Woodcock, who is an English PhD student here at Miami University, does work on race and gender and sexuality and Asian American cultural productions. And joining us from her apartment in Koreatown, Los Angeles, is Kristina Wong, who is a comedian, performance artist, writer, has been on many different TV shows, reality shows. She just had an appearance on General Hospital a few weeks ago. She's been on Totally Biased with W. Kamau Bell on FX. You were on that Chelsea Lately show, right?
I was not. No, I was not.
Chelsea something?
I was on a show with someone who was on Chelsea Lately. Is that
Okay.
that's helpful?
It was an indirect connection. Yeah, so hopefully you read Kristina's piece on XO Jane about yellow fever. I posted a couple of other YouTube clips from other Asian American actresses. You watched her episode, I Want Reparations for Yellow Fever. So first, Kristina, do you want to talk a little bit about your career arc in terms of engaging questions of yellow fever from your website, bigbadchinesemama.com, to this most recent reality TV episode?
Sure. So I have been making work since, I guess, public work outside of a campus since the year 2000. My very first project was the project I did as part of my senior thesis at UCLA, and it was a website called bigbadchinesemama.com. I grew up in San Francisco. I went to UCLA, and so that particular project was, it was, at that point, people were not doing that many projects on the internet. It was still like you'd write a paper, you perform something live, and that would be your senior project in the department I was in. And I wanted to actually confront sort of what activism looked like from where I was at on my campus. It was a lot of marches and rallies. And then what was creative was like spoken word was huge in 1999, and was, I felt like I was listening to the same poem over and over again. And I felt like a lot of the issues that were being confronted, the oppressors being confronted in these poems, were not present in the room. And I just thought, I feel like that this is such a lost opportunity. And at that point, if you Googled Asian women, and it's still the case now, you'd find mostly pornography sites and mail order bride websites, and a lot of the adjectives used to describe women would be like sweet, submissive Asian women. And the way women and race was, if you just look up Black women or Latina women, you'll find most usually pornography sites, and just check out the adjectives used to describe them. And that's pretty much what the stereotype is for women of that race. And so I thought I'd make a fake mail order bride website and trap the same people who I would never get to come to a live performance. And they would see a harem of fake brides. And for me, that this approach was not so much to confront the people that I was trapping by accident, the oppressors. It was more like I was more interested in provoking a conversation around activism on campus. UCLA is a very ethnically diverse campus. I think there's more people of color, I believe, than white students on that campus. And so there's a culture, there's like a bunch of, like, there's 2 Chinese clubs, a Japanese American club. There's like all these clubs for every single race. And I think it's easy to get comfortable sometimes and then just isolate and sort of really, and replicate things like misogyny and homophobia within these structures, rather than really use these moments as an opportunity to galvanize and organize against intersectional struggles. So that was what I was actually confronting the other activists on campus with that approach, or just other Asian Americans. But they seem to either really like my project or think that I was a militant feminist, which was actually the identity that I felt like I was trying to broaden and confront. And then I went on to make a body of live theater work, a lot of guerrilla theater work. I've dressed up like a fake Miss Chinatown. Miss Chinatown is a beauty pageant that happens in Chinese American communities all over non-Asian countries. And to sort of confront this idea of what a model Chinese American woman's supposed to look like. So I've shown up as Fanny Wong, former Miss Chinatown second runner-up, with a cigar, and I've done 5 solo shows and a play. My longest running play is a play called Wong Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which looks at the high rates of depression and suicide among Asian American women. I'm going to world premiere my show Wong Street Journal this June in San Francisco, and that is a play that's looking at privilege and poverty and my experience of going to Uganda as someone who's marginalized in America, but of great privilege over there, and trying to navigate what that was like to try to navigate that, but also making a rap album with locals over there. And I write a lot of essays, some of which you've read in class, and it's so much of I'm trying to do this for a living is continuing to like figure out how to do it and stay sane. But I've supported myself as an artist for the last 10 years. And so that's that. Do you have any other questions, Terry?
Well, I mean, it seems like
you want me to eliminate?
Your art is, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I mean, it seems like what you do is what makes you sane, right? That feeling, or maybe not, or that it's a tricky balance, or that it helps others with their struggles with mental illness. You know, I'm just thinking about your Wong Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest production, and how that tackles something that a lot of people within the Asian American community don't talk about. The high side of mental illness that targets specifically Asian American women. So, you know, I think it shows how art can be not just a form of confrontation, whether it's confrontation with so-called, you know, white men with yellow fever, but also forms of healing within the Asian American community.
I will say the work I do is very therapeutic in ways, like they take all the anxiety and it's like, I have like a whole, like you literally have people applauding you when, you know, when you're like have turned something so ugly into something kind of funny and beautiful. But it's not a replacement for therapy, for sure. And that I have learned across the years that while I work out, I seemingly am myself for a living, or whatever people have said to me, or whatever they reflect on me, what they think it is I do. I do think that it's not the same as actually carving out healing time in private space. And there's a lot of things that I have run into in my personal relationships with friends and loved ones because I am so public for a living.
Right. Well, speaking of being public, can you talk more about your I Want Reparations for Yellow Fever?
Sure.
What exactly drove you to perform in that episode? I mean, I know you did Big Bad Chinese Mama years before, but yeah, can you talk about why you decided to engage with questions of yellow fever at that point and in that particular medium?
I think reality TV is actually really aligned to what I do. I know it's like, oh, it's so trashy. I love watching it. I love reality TV. I feel like it's like non-political performance art with no social commentary. But I feel that, I mean, I'm so fascinated with some of the stuff on VH1, which in particular, a lot of their shows feature casts of color. From Flavor of Love and through that dynasty, I was just like, these are modern day minstrel shows. This is so weird. And it's almost like someone took a women's studies class and then went, fuck it, and then just like created these shows. And but I've been really fascinated by that line of reality and fiction, and that's what reality TV is. It's like most of the shows are very softly scripted, and sort of how people become characters, and yet they're performing their racial identities in these heightened ways. And so I had been trying to think for years as a guerrilla theater performer how to hack reality TV. And so I was approached to do it because of these essays and things, TV appearances I was doing about yellow fever. And I was really hesitant at first because, reality TV, they tend to have the storyline that they want to insert you in. But they were very open to working with me in terms of what I was trying to accomplish. And I came to them when they approached me. I said, well, this is how I would do it, because this is how I've had to navigate in my life. I'm always constantly thinking of when am in a situation and I'm dating somebody who doesn't understand basic things about privilege or racial inequity, I'm doing my mini form of micro reparations, and I'm trying to find ways to equalize an inherently inequitable relationship between me and the person I'm dating, who still, you know, as much as he's like, I don't have a fetish, I have to figure out ways to negotiate that power back. Yeah. I mean, now I don't even put up with those situations. Like, now I at least just go, no, I'm out of here. But and so that's where this idea, like, okay, I want reparations for yellow fever, because those are actually very, like, they were real dates, but that was very similar to some dating situations I've been in, where I've actually had people clean my house, or they say something totally inappropriate at dinner, and I'm like, the check comes and I disappeared to the bathroom, you know? And I'm just like, I mean, it's not the same as equalizing hundreds of years of colonialism and whatever, but this was my tongue-in-cheek way of trying to take back power in these small doses in this very personal interaction. So that's I mean, that was that episode, and they worked with me, and I mean, I everything that you saw is something similar that's happened in my life. I had a show in the UK, and we had the theater did not do a very good job getting an audience for me, and so my tech and I, we updated our zip codes on OkCupid, and we just had all these guys from OkCupid who wanted to date an Asian woman from America, or whatever, you know, maybe they were just interested. They were like all filling the audience, and that sort of became that storyline. But those were all real dates, and it was sort of like a synthesis of jokes over the last 15 years that I've done, and ideas that I've been putting out in my live theater work. Synthesized there.
So I want to turn or give the floor to both Nicolin and the rest of the class, but just quickly, of the 3 guys that you went on dates with on that episode, who did you like the most?
I think it's a tie. It's a tie for winners and losers. I think I could tell you who I hated the most. Or who I was just having the hardest time. That was the ginger. I was having the hardest time. It was so horrible. Like, I had in my mind everything that we wanted to accomplish, but like, that's the tricky thing with reality. It's like, it's really easy to be like, go away, stop it, don't, like, which is what I would have done in real life. But we were trying to, you know, we had to keep the cameras rolling, and we, you know, the idea was he was going to see my show that night, which he ended up bailing on. He was, right. Yeah, I mean, he really did bail. He was supposed to be there.
Wonder what? I mean, it seemed like you had a lot of fun with him, but yeah, he didn't seem too excited.
Yeah, no. He just seemed it was also, I think what what they had informed him was casting and informed him that he was going to be on a date with a Chinese singer and actress, which sounds completely different than what I am, right? And so that's how most of them were prepped. Like, they're like, okay, you're going to go on this date with a Chinese singer and actor, and I think they imagine like this beautiful Hong Kong singer or something, and it's me, this rapper from Uganda, or something to rap album in Uganda. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a rapper and a reality TV star. I own it.
Yeah.
I have an album.
You're huge in North Uganda.
Northern Uganda, absolutely.
Northern Uganda.
Yeah.
Which I want to hear about a little bit later.
Subject of my new show.
Let's hear from Nicolin.
Sure.
Nicolin has a few questions, and then
okay.
For the other students as well, this is a great chance to talk to a rapper, a famous rapper in Uganda, Nicolin.
Who started her career in her 30s. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hi again, Kristina. So can you talk a little bit about humor and how your work uses humor to engage tough conversations when so often humor is used to dismiss tough conversations instead of taking them seriously?
I'm going to need Terry to say the question again because it got cut off. What did you say? What did she say?
It was a similar question to the one she asked in the morning class about humor.
how do you use humor in your work to engage tough conversations when so often pop culture and stuff, humor is used to dismiss tough conversations?
Okay, yeah, I guess I knew early on, I didn't even identify as an activist. I had a really hard time identifying as an activist and feminist, even into my 20s, because I think there was so much misunderstanding personally I had about what those words were, because I had very distinct images of what that was. And I think, you know, maybe most people get this too, that over, like, angry, man-hating seem to be those words, and that's not the case. That we all, I mean, I can tell you, I feel that every person who owns those words should it doesn't mean that you've relinquished your desire to be attractive or be funny. I think that if anything, if you aren't the things that you think those words are, you can help stretch the definition of what that is. And so humor for me comes as mostly self-preservation, because I've been to rallies and marches, and I think they are important. I believe that sometimes the anger is a necessary response. I wear out super easily personally. And I feel there are always three responses in a situation that is oppressive. One is you don't do anything. Two is you act out, you respond with anger or march or protest, immediate protest. And the third is always the trickiest thing. And that's where, as a comedian, I'm always trying to figure out, it's like, how do you get inside the situation and puppet it from the inside and approach it in a way where other people will be drawn to understand what's happening, other than like, okay, all I see is anger, and now I'm going to walk away from it. So that's some insight of how I think about humor, is trying to get past the first two reactions, figure out what that third one is.
Want to ask another question?
Yeah, so this is also another version of one of the questions I asked you this morning about reality TV and documentary as genres. That, as you mentioned, they're softly scripted and they're heavily edited, right? So, but they're genres that we receive as audiences. So, being visual dramas as well, I'm wondering what these offer us, and that written word in fiction cannot offer us when it comes to this person, in terms of believing and changing the direction.
Okay, Terry, I need this is the same question about reality TV that was earlier. Oh, I'm seeing myself. Okay. Well, I think where reality, at least in this particular situation, this reality show is very low budget, and when and most reality shows are low budget, and so the people that they are able to put on camera are people who are willing to basically work for not a lot of money. But what one flip side you see versus scripted television or is you get to see the kind of bodies, relationships, and personalities that you don't get to see on scripted TV. And what I've heard theorists describe it as reality TV is where all the undesirables go. So, and I'm not saying like undesirables is viewed by mainstream dominant culture. Okay, this is not Kristina saying ill, because I'm one of those undesirables, right? So you'll see people of size, you'll see queer people, you'll see more interracial relationships playing out on reality TV than you will on scripted television. You'll maybe see more disabled people. So that is in a way like, oh wow, like we get to see this other end. However, it's couched in like trashy reality TV, right? And it's also scripted, and it is also still a form of entertainment for folks. So for America to watch. So that's the tricky part. I mean, where I was very lucky was here was an opportunity that I was not going to get from mainstream scripted television, was a low budget reality show coming to me and willing to have me help like storyline, how I wanted my storyline to unfold. A lot of most reality shows don't approach their subjects with the openness they already have a storyline in mind, and they had a lot of themes and ideas that they wanted to get across. But I was very lucky that I had a producer who was willing to hear out my ideas And while they all like really played out, I mean, you know, it was like they could not afford to like follow me around for 5 days and see what happened. Like we had specific sites to capture and do that, do the show, tape the show.
All right, so
I'm riveting.
It's very riveting. I have a couple of questions, but I'm going to save them and give the floor to the class. So does anyone have any questions or comments to Kristina? Let's go with Tara first. And it sounds like you're going to have to speak up pretty loud.
Yeah, if you don't mind coming up to the computer, it helps me a lot to hear.
Okay, you come up to the device and speak into it. There's a microphone in there, but it's not the greatest. Or how about just like that?
Hi, Tara. Hi. Hi.
Opinion on Fresh Off the Boat. What do you like it?
It's hard to hear. No, can you?
So Tara asked what your opinion is of Fresh Off the Boat. Do you like it? Do you not like it? If you like it,
okay. I think I only saw up to 6 episodes. I'm friends with some of the folks who are on the show, and so I like that it exists. I don't, you know, obviously, I think what's always going to happen when a population that you don't see represented on TV is finally on TV is everyone who doesn't feel represented by it has an issue with it. And I think they've done a good job of introducing a lot of the quirks of like I was like, I forgot that my grandparents had a salon hair dryer. It was so random, and that was like a storyline, in their house. And I was like, that reminded me that my grandparents had that. And I was like, wow, it's so weird that they picked up on these weird odds and ends. I like it. I'm glad it exists. I hope it's not the beyond all.
Yeah,
there are more other shows.
That brings up something that just happened recently with Eddie Wong, the creator of Fresh Off the Boat, who has pretty much distanced or divorced himself from the show.
Yeah.
Right? Like he feels like the show is just so far away from some of the more serious themes that he addressed in his novel or the memoir. That he doesn't want anything to do with the show. So, you know, given the certain limits, you know, and thinking about this question of genre and how certain genres such as reality TV or network television allows for certain kinds of more politicized humor to happen or not. And, you know, a lot of your humor is pretty risque in terms of its content. What would you, in a scenario in which you were given the opportunity to have your own show about your own life growing up as a Chinese American woman in San Francisco, which actually we've seen already in the 90s with Margaret Cho done differently. How would you approach that hypothetical scenario? I'm
actually, scripted series. I would probably do a series about what it's like for my life as a performance artist and to sort of what all I bumped up against, like in terms of like trying to explain what I do to my family, and then like I mean it's hilarious when my family comes to my shows and their reactions, and in general, like nobody gets what the heck it is I do. I mean, people get what I do, but like the stage stuff is really, I mean, it really goes deep. I'm referencing other performance artists that other people have not heard of. So I'm going to talk about like, you know, a really fringy corner of the world. That's where I work. That's probably what I'm more interested in than a family drama, or you know, family sitcom. I was approached actually to do. So there are all these production companies who are. When a scripted show is successful, production companies for reality production companies are thinking about doing the reality show version of it, which is how we ended up with all these housewife series. It started with Desperate Housewives, the scripted series, and now we have, you know, Real Housewives of whatever city, and Love and Hip Hop, like all these reality shows about relationships and stuff like that. And they asked if my family would be interested in being in a in a reality show, which they weren't. So that conversation ended very quickly. But they were looking for comedians who would bring their family on camera. Reality-wise, I'm interested in the kind of work I am already doing, which is like my experience of going to Uganda and accidentally recording a rap album, and that was a series that I was sort of slowly shopping around last year. It was a tricky sell, but like going what it was like to experience Uganda, not through the eyes of just like a tourist looking at what we mostly get in the U.S., which is like seeing these immediate image of mutilation and war, but understanding war through the eyes of these rappers who were really young kids during that war, and now have these dreams of being music stars and taking advantage of the fact that now they're in post-conflict northern Uganda, and there's an economy that's booming and growing and could possibly support their music. So anyway, that's so those are the things I'm interested in, and more prank type stuff. Michael Moore had a reality show called The Awful Truth, which I was like, I would love to see this with me doing what Michael Moore is doing, like punking and pranking different entities. I feel like that to me is more interesting than scripted work.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, especially if you wear your vagina costume, which you don't know about. We have about 10 minutes. We had a question over here, and then we'll get to Mali. If you could come up. Yeah. Apparently, this is not the highest quality of video cameras.
So,
this is Brandon, by the way.
my name is Brandon. Thank you, Ms. Wong, for talking to us. I'm from a really small rural town in Northwest Ohio. And so my question to you is, what's the best medium to kind of pronounce these issues to people, in rural areas who might not necessarily have had any exposure with them before or ever?
Okay. Okay, like how to well, I'm glad you're asking that. I feel like the question of this topic of white privilege is coming up. I'm assuming you're a white man. If not, you pass with a lot of white male privilege. But like, your white allies are key in terms of because I feel like when people of color are trying to describe racism that they're experiencing, it just sounds like whining to a lot of people who don't get it. But it takes someone who looks like other white people saying, this is not right, and I think you should actually listen to them, or why don't we just step back in this situation and let this person that we never hear from speak for themselves. I think that's a really key position that white people have in sort of working towards dismantling racism, is helping to recognize and point it out to other white folks. So I think that's what you're asking, but I think it's just like knowing that you have this privilege, acknowledging it and helping other people realize they have that privilege. And it doesn't mean that that when you were born and you're white, like boom, someone handed you all this money, but that you have this opportunity to pass in situations to avoid harassment or avoid being identified or marginalized because of your race. Is that clear? I hope it's helpful.
Yeah.
I can keep going if you want.
No, that was great, and that brings up a lot of critiques that have come out by certain activists and academic communities of color who have pointed out that the burden of explaining how white supremacy operates often falls on the shoulders of people of color, and that's another burden that people of color bear. And that this burden should be shared by white allies themselves. And in some ways can be even more effective, as Kristina pointed out, when the messengers are from one's own community, right?
Yeah.
There's a video that just came out a couple of weeks ago of this so-called redneck. Dixon.
Yeah, that guy's amazing.
So, that was an accent. He's actually an actor. But, I mean, he is from the South.
He's in it. Oh, yeah. It wasn't. He's an actor.
He's an actor
playing a redneck.
Yeah, but he identifies as a redneck, but he sort of exaggerated a redneck persona. Talk about white supremacy and how white folks themselves have a responsibility to do something about it, and not just step back and throw your hands up, and say, no, people of color should do it, but that, there is a role. And that's the challenge, right? Of, okay, so then what is your role? And what are the different ways in which you can use your position of privilege to enact some kind of change? Or, when it comes to male privilege, right? Or class privilege. Most of us have some sort of structural privilege, right? That we may or may not be aware of. So then one step is recognizing it, but then what do you do about it? And that's not an easy question, right? With, hopefully classes like this and performances such as Kristina Wong's opens up this question of multiple sites of privilege and multiple spaces and methods of mobilizing or leveraging that privilege to make transformations in rural Ohio or San Francisco, California. We have about 5 minutes left. Mali, if you could come up here and ask your question.
Hi.
Hi.
It's just that, so like in your show or in your like blogs and stuff, you address yellow fever. Who exactly is your main audience? Is it just Asian women? And like, how would you recommend them to like deal with yellow fever?
Thank you. I couldn't quite hear the question. So Terry, can
generally, who is your audience?
who's my audience?
And when you perform or talk about yellow fever, and what are some suggestions you would offer to specifically Asian American women to deal with yellow fever?
Okay. Eat as much as possible. Eat as much free food as you possibly can. And no, I don't know. I mean, I think I ended up giving dating advice at the last class, but I think it's to be very clear when you, in any dating situation, that we read, whether we subliminally realize it or not, we're reading people by race. I mean, if you don't see race, that you're racist, right? Like you just have to understand that this is happening, and you have to recognize that people come from different backgrounds, and it's both about seeing people as human, but understanding culturally where they're housed and what baggage is coming with that, and when you're buying into that. So my audience, I at least my live work, I make my audience, my work for audiences that are a little bit sophisticated enough to show up at a theater, that are interested in talking more in depth about stuff that I bring up in my like TV show appearances, because the live work I really hone over many months and years, and those tend to be the smallest audiences of all the stuff that I make, and yet it's the bulk of what I do. In terms of dealing with yellow fever, I feel like what I have learned over the years when I've encountered situations where I'm red on race is I want to be very clear with whoever I'm dating or even friends that I'm bringing into my life, that they understand where I'm at with racism, with talking about race. Like it goes beyond having a black best friend, or I once dated a so-and-so and somehow that is equal to having unworked racism, or I witnessed this and I felt so bad, or I was bullied as a kid. Like that doesn't, those are all experiences that a lot of people have had, but understanding structural racism and understanding that despite a civil rights movement, Black and brown people have been left behind the most, and that white people have privilege, that even Asian people are beginning to benefit from some of that white privilege, and yet we don't all the time. Like those are the discussions that I want to have and want to recognize as real, and I want that people I date to be able to have conversations on that level with me and have understanding on that level, because if we don't, we're not going to probably get along down the road, or it's going to become a point that we bump up against. So I think it's just being very clear as Asian women, and no one really taught me how to date, and reality TV certainly did not teach me how to date, but like to be very clear about what it is I want, and then to present that up front, and not to be the coy and submissive girl that's like, well, I'll just hope it works itself out. Like that it never works itself out. You have to actually put it on the table and address it. And it's not just about race, but about histories of violence or histories of how you like to be communicated to, or whatever it is you want in a dating situation, a relationship, whether it be friend or romantic. Just to be very clear with who you're communicating to, and learn to communicate, which is something I'm just only learning to do in the last few years.
Yeah,
So
it's an ongoing process for sure.
Yeah.
We have time for one more question for Kristina. One more. Participate in class.
You got one, Terry?
No, I'm out. I'm done.
You're done.
I'd rather hear from a student.
Okay. I love the staring contest.
Oh, I love it.
Staring contest with Ohio.
Yeah. Come on, one more question. Anything. Doesn't matter.
Any.
Kristina will answer any question. All right.
All right. Oh, cool.
How much do you think about the term Orientalism or Oriental? Okay. So who wants to know what you think of Edward Said's notion of Orientalism?
I never read the book. I can only go. I've only read quotes. I've read quotes in the book. Is that bad? Do I get kicked out of a?
Yeah, you get a lower.
The cool club. I know. It's like essential reading, right? I think I own the book somewhere, but
It's fine. It's fine.
I mean, I haven't read everything that everyone's been reading.
But I think there are different ways in which we can engage critical thinking, right? Not just
yeah. I'm familiar with what it is, but I wish I could just revisit and read it before I respond to that.
That's fine. That's fine. We have time for one more question. Have a burning. All right, Kofi in the back. I'll repeat it.
I asked it's not already. I was wondering how you compare
So Kofi's question was, what do you think of parallels or similarities between yellow fever and black fever, or the objectification, fetishization of black bodies?
Black bombs? Black bodies.
Bodies. Black women. So people who have a fetish for black women.
It's a different dynamic, but it's still someone being. It's still the idea of bodies monolithically representing some kind of thing that the person who desires doesn't feel like they have access to in sort of a standard dominant culture that they're acquainted in. I don't even know I'm acquainted, but I do think it's a very different dynamic. But there are some similarities, and that it's about othering, it's about exoticness.
Yeah, actually, in the morning class, we heard of one student who said that her best friend, who's a black woman here at Miami, constantly, every week, gets approached by frat boys saying, hey, do you want to be my first black girlfriend? I've always wanted to date a black girl. Do you want to be her? So, these otherings of racialized bodies, whether black or Asian, happens here at Miami, right? We're not immune to it, of course. And so, as they're murmuring, I'm sure, maybe this is something you've heard or confronted, but, this goes back to your point earlier this morning about how, in America, we usually think about racism as these sort of spectacularized acts of violence, a cross burning on someone's front lawn, or, the KKK in their white robes, but how racism is much more insidious and everyday. It's much more microcosmic, whether it's in the form of, a frat boy saying, hey, black girl, do you want to be my first black girlfriend? Or, as we talked about in this morning, college parties, a lot of frat parties having certain racialized themes. one student said she heard about a jungle fever party. A friend of mine who is a Vietnamese American spoken word poet, Bao Phi, wrote a poem about a frat party that happened in Florida that was centered around the Vietnam War and how the frat guys were supposed to dress up as American GIs and the women were supposed to dress up looking like so-called Vietnamese sex workers or prostitutes. So, what does it say when these college spaces reenact these scenarios of racialized violence and how they're often dismissed as, oh, it's just a joke. It's just a party. We're not being offensive. Get over it. You're too sensitive, right? And how these sort of micro aggressions that happen on a daily basis can accumulate and sometimes explode, right? And that they're actually associated with much longer histories of Orientalism, right, that we talked about in this class, or deindustrialization, which we've also talked about, and which is something that is connected to Baltimore, right? These more invisible structures and conditions that feed into the dehumanization of our fellow students. And that's something that, is a challenge to all of us. And then how do we respond? And this is something that I think Kristina's work really pushes us to think about, that there are marches and rallies which are definitely important, right, to show up, but how can we use humor as a way to respond and carve out some sense of dignity for ourselves in the face of overwhelming, unrelenting racism? I asked you on Wednesday or Monday to think about how you can use your major, even if it's chemistry or computer science, something that seems so disconnected to improving the lives of people. How can you use your privilege, right? Because this college is a privilege. A Miami education is also a privilege. And what you're learning doesn't have to just go into, your pocketbooks, but how can you use it to improve the communities that you inhabit and the nation that you live in? And even right now, this campus, right? This is your community. So how can you use the tools from this class? How can you use Kristina's performances to think about the different ways in which you can confront and transform conditions of inequality? So let's leave it there. But let's thank both Kristina Wong and Nicholin Woodcock for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend. Thanks, Kristina.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, class. Fight the power.
How was it? You have fun?
Yeah, we're still live.
We are. Oh, shoot. Let me stop.